Howdy folks, Brian here. If you have a story relevant to today's video, be sure to leave it in the comments below as we're always reading them. And we're always looking to share your experiences with the world. Now, grab your favorite drink, get comfy, and let's dig in. What caused the outburst that ruined your D&D session? Part 3. The one time a session has been completely ruined for me was when my character was killed by another player. I was playing a vampire warlock. Not nearly as edgy as it sounds, and I didn't start out as a vamp. Was turned halfway in because of another player's actions, those of the party's rogue. I fell into a pit trap, one with a bunch of wooden spikes at the bottom. I rolled low on my luck check and was pinned. Plus, I was unable to regenerate. The rogue climbed down to help me and killed me instead as soon as he had a chance. I tried my best to survive, but the dice were not in my favor. I just left. There was only 20 minutes left in the session anyway. I walked home, swearing under my breath the whole time, which is especially bad because I try to avoid swearing. The worst part was that the next week I found out that he had conned everyone else into thinking that I simply died from my wounds. I still feel betrayed about that because I thought we had worked out our issues beforehand, and I honestly considered the player a friend. It's alright though. I took everything the rogue disliked about my old character and turned it up to 11 with my new one, and I know I would win if he tries to start a fight. I'm in a game right now. I've been playing D&D since I was 9, now 19, and have only ever been a DM. This is my first time as a player. Last session, one player killed another. Whenever I DM'd, I told them not to kill other party members and don't take away other players' free will with charm person and stuff like that. It was my standard rule since I started. Of course, you can argue in-game stuff with others for flavor, but nothing that affects other PCs in a big way. I pulled my DM aside after session and told him I wasn't comfortable with players killing other players or doing anything like that. He told me he was going to allow it, and I was/am tempted to leave. I get that different DMs have different styles, but I can't see anything but real-world conflict happening because of this. There was one time in Pathfinder that just ruined my chance at having fun. It was a one-off session where the party were level 20s. I was playing a mobile fighter archetype that specializes in two-weapon fighting. All session, GM kept finding excuses to just nerf my character. Have to make a full move action to get my bonus to hit instead of a 5-foot step. I have to move at least 5 feet just to get the bonus. Freedom of movement negates the stunned condition. I had the stunning critical feat. Enemy keeps spamming the heal spell after I nearly finish him. Apparently enemy had unlimited uses of the spell. This guy used to be good friends with my dad. He was also part of the group. And when my dad saw how this guy was treating me in-game over the other players, he lost it and told the group that he and I are leaving if this attitude doesn't change, which it didn't. I was once role-playing my character in a group with two others who were murder hobos, a druid and a rogue. I was a neutral good while they were chaotic evil and chaotic neutral, but both acting chaotic evil, killing and looting everything and everyone. So when I finally had the chance to leave the group unnoticed and was told by them, not the DM, I couldn't. I went outside for a bit to cool off and later packed my things and left. The outburst happened before I could even join in the campaign. I was drawing characters for a superhero comic I was working on at the time, not related to the D&D session. I created a character who was basically Aquaman, but with the color palette of the Little Mermaid, because I liked those colors more. I even explained this to them. They took this as me being transphobic somehow, and said I offended another person in the group who, 1, I've never met or spoken to, 2, did not know they were in the group chat, and 3, the person I supposedly offended said nothing about it, but instead just let the others virtually attack me. I ended up leaving them after knowing these people online for about 5 years. They were hypocrites too, as they were fine with gender swap less than a year prior. Yet somehow overnight, it was now offensive? There were other things too that I had problems with these people. Like the time I was being cyberbullied for over 3 months by another girl in the group, and none of them standing up for me or showed any support when I asked. Ended up blocking her and her other accounts. The group then came to me begging to show her forgiveness when she convinced them that she was going to kill herself. She did not even scratch her own skin. She was one of those narcissistic people who pretends to be mentally unstable and or suicidal for attention. But this attack on me by nearly the whole group was just the final straw for me. And after maybe 2 weeks, one of them came back to me asking if I apologized. I sent what was basically a decoy to see what would happen, and it was torn into confetti in an instant. So I turned down that false olive branch, never spoke to them again. However, 2 guys from that original group who weren't involved in what happened joined me in leaving less than a month later when they finally came back online. We were playing a 4-player session of 3.5. A friend of mine that was new to DMing led the game. His buddy, who I'd only met once before but was allegedly this veteran player, my brother, and myself. The outburst was shared between myself and this buddy whom I'd recently met. Now, to set the scene a bit, my brother and I have a pretty standard homebrew rule of ignoring encumbrance. We don't like to fuck with how much our gold and equipment or whatever is slowing us down. It's no fun and we don't play that way, and our DM agreed that if we didn't want to play with it, we won't, so long as everything was within reason. For larger amounts of treasure, we'd have like a mule or something to haul it. Otherwise, we just ignore it and focus on the fun parts of the game. So, moving on. Now, this guy was one of those uber power gamers. He created a level 1 rogue using rules, items / weapons, racial features, etc. from probably a dozen different source books. For instance, he could make something like 4, or maybe more, sneak attacks at ranged with an elven double bow with enough power to one-shot an ogre at level 1. He was also pretty immature in the sense that he was always trying to have sex with every female NPC we came across. You could say I didn't like him from the start, but that's just the kind of guy he was. So when we finally get into our adventure and we start squaring off against our first baddies, I make an attack against an enemy and rolled a 3. However, I had True Strike cast on me, which in 3.5 adds 20 to the attack roll, making my roll a 23. I don't recall what we were fighting, but it was some standard level 1 trash. Zombies, I think. Anyway, I inform our DM that I got a 23 and started to roll for damage. However, this friend of his disagreed and said it's actually a miss. I explained to him, no, I have True Strike, so it's a hit. He explains, whenever you roll for an attack, if it's a 4 or lower, it's automatically a miss no matter how much you add to it. And that's when our argument started. I told him, no, it's only a nat 1 is considered an auto miss. All other instances you have to add up the modifiers to determine if an attack exceeds the target's AC or not. Then he looks right past me to our DM and says, wow, these guys really do just make up their own rules, don't they? Referring to me and my brother. Naturally, I got pissed because I knew the rules very well and had well over 10 years of experience at the time. I looked at our DM and said, is this guy serious? I kinda would too at this point. There was some going back and forth of him saying how he's been playing D&D longer than I have and knows the rules like the back of his hand. I just tell him, show me. Show me where in the rules it says I automatically miss on a 4 or lower. He responds, if you're going to play that way, you really should have read the book. I explain that I have and say, look, I, of course, pull up the automatic miss rules in the player's handbook that clearly states any attack that is a 1 is an automatic miss, with no mention of any other number. I further explain that if we used what he believed to be the correct rule, he's innately giving literally every single being in the game better partial cover, which in 3.5, if you had partial cover, there was a 20% chance any non-ranged attack would fail. I then say, and until you show me a rule that says otherwise, this is how we're going to play it because you clearly don't know what you're talking about. At this point, the game session had already ended, but this really pissed him off. His face got all red and he starts digging through his books, trying to find something to contradict what I was saying. After a few minutes of furious searching, he throws probably half a dozen different books on the table and says, I know I've read it, and it's there somewhere. I replied, the only books that matter are the player's handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and the Monster's Manual. If it's not listed in those 3 core books, then it's considered a variant rule that the DM has to allow. Even then, I seriously doubt there's a variant rule in these books that gives literally every single creature in the game permanent partial cover. Damn, that was kind of a good rip there. Not gonna lie. His face got beet red and I swear he was on the verge of hitting me. There was some more back and forth going on and I'm sure my face was pretty red at this point too because the both of us were quite heated from this argument. He starts packing up his books and papers and says something along the lines of, I'm not going to play with anyone that calls me a liar. And I immediately responded without missing a beat. I'm not calling you a liar, dude. The player handbook is. Oh shit. At this point, something very strange happened. A high-pitched beeping sound started going off, almost like a smoke detector. I go, what the hell is that? Only to find out that his buddy I had been arguing with had some kind of heart monitor or something. Thinking back, it's actually quite funny to think about. I owned this guy so hard his heart monitor went off. Needless to say, I never played D&D with that dude again. My session-ruining outburst came from my first ever time actually playing D&D. I was playing a sort of Session 0 fight tournament with my family, my brother being the DM. The first fight was me fighting my dad, who was a classic half-orc barbarian, while I was a human monk, in a pit fight for the local town's Festival of Strength. This Session 0 was meant to be a prelude to what would have been a campaign me and my family would play. The fight itself was awesome, and it was a really awesome way to learn our characters' abilities and to roleplay, since my dad was new to the game. Me, being somewhat adept at the rules of the game, I put up a good fight, but my dad's half-orc ability to survive a lethal blow with 1 HP sealed my fate, and I was defeated. After both our characters were healed and kind words were exchanged, my sister walks into the room with her character, a half-elf rogue, and barges into the game. She tells how her character was secretly hiding in the trees the entire time, watching the fight. And, at the end of it, her character throws a dagger into the pit with a message attached to it, telling us that we were being watched. Naturally, I asked to try and perceive where the dagger came from, to which my brother replied and asked me to roll for it. Before I could even pick up the dice, my sister immediately bolts up from her chair and begins screaming at me, asking, "Why would I do that?" And that I'm ruining the fun for her. Me, being utterly gobsmacked by her outburst, tried to calmly justify my character's actions to find whoever left this message, but my still screaming sister just storms out of the room in a big huff. My dad then exclaimed that if either of us behaved this way during the actual game, then he wasn't going to play at all. The session, which was meant to be a tournament between other members of my family, ended there as everyone was heated after that exchange. The campaign itself only lasted a session, as lo and behold, my sister didn't want to play anymore, all because me playing my character normally was ruining the fun. Hey everyone, Brian here, just making sure everyone's doing alright today and that y'all aren't too angry or upset because of some of the stories. Normally I'd not check in about the latter half of that, but honestly, some of these stories got pretty heated, not gonna lie. There was even one in particular I wanted to talk about briefly, if you're willing to stick around and indulge me for a few. Now, if you've been paying attention at all to me in general when I'm making these outros, you might know I'm something of an advocate for mental health. Not only am I trying to spread the word about and make sure that everyone's aware that mental health is a real thing that's kind of serious, but I'm making sure that people are okay and taking the steps to be okay or to help others. In one of these stories in particular, we had a heated topic about suicide, which, trust me, I do know a lot about and I kind of wish I didn't. Suicide, or people who may feel suicidal, it isn't a joke, and I've known plenty of people in that boat and I truly do feel for them. No matter who the person is or what their story is, you should always take these things as seriously as possible, because you never know when it may or may not be true. Now, in the case of this story, I can understand how frustrating it may be to see others being manipulated, especially using something like that. It's kinda sad. But I'm glad to see that this person in the story didn't resort to bullying to get back at things. I'm actually proud of that. You should always be careful with the people you play games with or consider friends or family or anything, because they might be going through a lot of this stuff. And I want each and every one of you to be safe out there. And more so, and this is really important to me, to help others be safe too. Do you have somebody you know that's not feeling too hot? Well, ask them how they're doing. Have you not spoken to a friend of yours or a family member in quite some time? Check in and say hi. You never know how it's going to help them. And if they ever mention anything about wanting to die or wanting to hurt themselves, take it seriously. Spend a minute listening to them and let them know that they matter, because you never know, they might just be serious. And if you can, try to find them some help. Encourage them to go seek help, because honestly, it's the best thing you can do is to show them that they're not a burden. Especially in times like this, you never know what someone's going through. So, honestly, there's my say in it. There's my 2 cents, everybody. Now, with that heart-to-heart and all that heat out of the way, I truly do hope everyone is doing well, and that you enjoyed the vid. And if you do have a story relevant to the topic here, go ahead and drop it in the comments below, because we really do love listening to all of them, and we want you to hear one of us read it out loud too. You never know if we will, but we at least do read all of them. Trust me, we do. I go combing through the comments some days at middle of the night just to read some of your lovely stories or some of the sad ones. Anyway, with that all said and done, I want you guys and gals to have a good day, a good night. Remember to be kind to each other, and most importantly, be kind to yourself. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.